Hey, Polly.
Hey Greg, how are you?
I'm all right. How about yourself?
Pretty good.
So today's guest I met at Prevention Day in Caca last year.
Oh, met a
So
lot of people there, huh?
I try and meet as many as I can. Next time I'm gonna try and meet somebody from every state, but that's a next time
Did we
thing.
already talk about this? You
Uh,
having like the magnet like on the side of the camper with all the different little states?
No,
No?
no, that wouldn't be me. I just had a business card from somebody in every state. That would be more
No,
me.
you need like the United States
No,
with all the little magnets that you stick on as you meet people.
no, 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 no.
I'm glad you're saying no because that makes me want to get you one.
It's bad enough that the kids and I we try to play these little games and there'll be can you name the state just by the shape of it, and
Um,
there's a couple I can get, but there's other ones that wouldn't help, so maybe that game would help.
maybe.
you know
Mhm.
the kids show me up every time I haven't won, but but
But wait, we're doing a
that's right. That's
podcast.
right. However, our behavior is changing,
Yeah, yeah.
which loops into our guest, PAXIS.
All right.
Now,
What's PAXIS
so
up to?
PAXIS is a youth behavioral program, um, organization, I should say. And I've had the pleasure to meet Natasha Battle. She's um, an outreach team manager from PAXIS. And when I met her at CADCA, and we were um, exchanging information. I was like, I got to get you on the podcast. And finally, it has happened. And
Excellent.
she's going to put us up on this program that I think is going to change a lot of lives.
Good. Great. Can't wait to hear more.
So without further ado, today joining us on Totally Preventable, we have Natasha Battle, the PAX's outreach team manager. Natasha, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. It's chilly, but I'm doing all right.
It
Right.
is chilly here too. Where are you located?
I actually reside in New York State.
Okay.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right.
So yeah, it's chilly there too.
Yeah.
I would normally bust out in my Alicia Keys, New York, but I'm not. I want to save the public.
Oh.
I don't.
Okay.
You know, I don't want the voice calling me and everything during our podcast. So,
Mm.
yeah. So
Natasha has your number.
yeah. Okay. So Natasha, to start our podcast like we normally do, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with Paxis Institute for about a year and a half. But before I started my work full time at Paxis Institute, I actually worked at a prevention education agency, and we provided prevention education in the realm of substance misuse to districts all across the county where I live. And so that looks like providing a lot of skill development education to prevent that substance misuse. So, skill development lessons on things like, how to have successful relationships, how to manage and cope with emotions, how to set goals and reach your goals. And so I spent a few years doing that. And then before that, I had some time at a prevention education agency where I was teaching about healthy relationships and trying to really create awareness around domestic violence and healthy relationships and work on in the prevention space of preventing domestic violence and dating abuse.
Mm,
And so I have a few years under my belt in the prevention space.
awesome.
So can you tell us a little bit about Paxis? We see they have a unique approach to fostering positive behaviors in children. And so anyone who's unfamiliar, kind of like
Yeah,
myself here, can you give us a little snapshot of what you do in your mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately, Paxis Institute is a prevention science company. And I know that that language can sound foreign to many people, but ultimately, what we do is we develop and we support the implementation of these tested, proven, solution focused strategies. And we're seeking these real world outcomes for children and the adults that care for children. And so we are actually seeking to partner with communities and help improve lifetime outcomes at a population level to create peace, productivity, health, and happiness. And another way of saying this is we're really trying to equip adults, caring adults, with trauma-informed, evidence-based strategies to teach children behavior as a skill set and really to support nurturing environments in all the places and spaces where adults are interacting with youth across our communities. So that could be in schools, that could be at home, but also in community agencies like the Community Youth Center or human services agencies, for example.
Now, what does PAX stand for? PAX.
Yes, good question. People oftentimes think that it's an acronym because we always capitalize all the letters, but it's actually a Latin word and it means peace. So you heard me say peace, productivity, health, and happiness. When we use that word PAX, we actually mean it to include all of those things. And so we mean any strategies or behavior that promote peace, and that includes reducing stress, reducing anxiety. We also mean PAX to say we're improving productivity. So improving stamina and focus on tasks, and then health. So we're looking at PAX strategies to really improve the, mental health, behavioral health, and improve those lifetime outcomes for children. And that includes reducing substance misuse, for example. And then we also mean happiness. So promoting positive relationships, and not just positive relationships between peers, but also positive relationships and collaboration and cooperation between youth and the adults who are caring for those youth.
My Latin teacher would be very upset that I didn't know
You
what
should
PAX
know.
was. Yeah, up to Latin 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I know my teacher would be very upset that I didn't catch on to that.
Oh my goodness, this is Latin too.
Oh.
I'm gonna ask him.
I'm impressed that you even took Latin.
Oh yeah, it was stressful, but I made it through.
Many programs focus on intervention after a problem arises. What makes PAX proactive?
Yeah, that's a great question. PAX, although it's technically an environmental intervention, it's really a prevention set of strategies. And so we're looking to prevent poor outcomes and prevent problematic behavior by teaching behavior as a skill set. So really, we are prevention, and we aren't looking to intervene, but really set up adults and kids with success before the problems arise.
Now, you mentioned earlier evidence-based strategies. So
Mhm.
how do you use that to create lasting change? And can you share an example of PAX in action?
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned we really want to equip and support adults and children in all of those places across a community where they are interacting and where adults are caring for children. And so we do this by providing training and professional development for any adult who has interactions with children. And we walk through step by step how to use these evidence-based strategies in the environments where they are interacting with kids. And so we have several different trainings and applications for our PAX strategies. And the trainings are really designed to speak to the type of interactions you're having. So an example of this would be the PAX Good Behavior Game. This is our set of strategies that we use in schools. So if you are a teacher, an educator, a paraprofessional, a principal, any adult who is working with children in a school building during normal school hours, you can take the PAX Good Behavior Game training and learn how to use 10 strategies as well as what we call the good behavior game. And so we teach these adults how to use those strategies, and they begin to use them very simply in their daily interactions with youth and during their normal procedures in the classroom. They don't have to replace anything. They just kind of weave these in, and they're very simple. And then those strategies will create that nurturing environment in that classroom, in that building, which is ideal for teaching. And it's really the necessary type of environment that students need in order to thrive and really be successful at learning. And as this nurturing environment is created, it helps children to learn self-regulation or learn how to control their behavior. And it teaches them how to exhibit that positive behavior while at the same time reducing problematic behavior. So that's an example of one of the sets of strategies that we use to help equip adults in the community.
So these are all strategies. These aren't courses that people have to take. Like this isn't a 14-week course. This is just you're teaching the strategies that are needed.
Correct. I mean, we do provide the training
Mm.
so that, teachers, for example, can learn how to use the strategies, but the PAX Good Behavior Game training is 6 content hours. So
Okay.
you're going to sit through it in a day-long training or, 2 half-day sessions, for example, and you'll walk away from that training ready to begin using those strategies right away.
Awesome.
And yeah, so no, it's not like a college course or several weeks of classes.
Got it. Thank you.
So behavior change is tricky. How do you ensure that once you have taught some new behaviors that it's sustainable?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think the first thing that's important to mention is that we're really focusing on equipping the adults who have those daily interactions with kids. And so we give them very simple, what we call recipes or steps in how to implement these strategies. And because they're simple and they easily weave into what they're already doing with kids, it makes it easy to continue and maintain those strategies, especially once you begin to see the impacts of creating that nurturing environment and helping students to succeed or kids to succeed in their self regulation. And then as far as PAXIS goes, we also do provide additional trainings where adults can come back and get a refresh on the strategies. We also offer what we call PAX support sessions for anybody that's been trained in the strategies. They can jump on a Zoom meeting and ask a PAX professional for questions and get help brainstorming implementation. And so we really try to focus on those adults who are already committed in their interactions with youth and are just looking for more positive ways to impact the lives of youth.
Now, the concept of nurturing environments, that's central to PAXIS work. Um, what is that in practical terms, layman terms, and how can caring for adults help create these environments in the community?
Yeah, great question. So the nurturing environment framework has 4 cornerstones, but overall, that framework is about a balance between teaching and reinforcing positive behavior, and then on the other side, managing and preventing unwanted behavior. And so when we look at teaching and reinforcing positive behavior, we have 2 of those cornerstones, which is psychological safety and flexibility. And we build that through collaboration and building routines. And then, secondly, we have reinforcing pro social behavior. And we do that by really noticing and giving lots of attention to and celebrating progress and positive behavior. And then on the other side, we have managing and preventing unwanted behavior. And that has 2 cornerstones in this nurturing environment framework. And one of those is reducing toxic influences. So we're really providing that protection and those positive alternatives to toxic influences. And secondly, we have limiting problematic behavior. And this is really about creating clear expectations and providing reasonable limits when we are talking about behavior and what's appropriate in a space or an environment.
Hmm.
And so we really look at that balance in that nurturing environment and creating that balance. And each of the PAC strategies contributes to one of those, or actually more than one, most of them of those cornerstones.
Right.
Do you have any success, sorry, do you have any success stories, there we go, that you could share where people have implemented PACS and there's been like a culture change in a school or?
Yes, we have so many success stories. PAX has been implemented in many, many buildings across the United States and even in other countries. One that I am excited about. So I talked a little bit about the school-based side of things, but we also have our community-based side of things, and we call those strategies PAX tools. And we see that there's a shift in the culture in places like community youth centers and recreational centers, places like Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs. And the data shows us that as youth workers and youth development staff are going through training, they're feeling like they are equipped or better equipped to work with young people. And they feel that their competence has actually increased in working with young people after they learn these tools. And then after a little while of implementation, they also report back that the positive work that they're doing is being recognized on a supervisor level, to the extent that their supervisors are coming back to them and saying, hey, I appreciate that the positive strategies that you're using with the youth, and they're reinforcing the changes that they've noticed because of using PAX tools strategies. And then we also see that there's an observed reduction in symptoms of depression for children in these recreational youth development spaces where PAX tool strategies are being used. And so we have lots of success for the PAX Good Behavior game, but also for our community-based PAX tools as well.
What findings best showcase PAX's success? That's hard to say.
PAXI.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really is about what is important to the adult you're talking to, right? So we have some teachers who are like, okay, I just need to make it through my day to day. I'm getting distracted by too many interruptions and problematic behavior. So for them, the findings that really support or showcase PAX is the reduction, those immediate benefits, right? The reduction in problematic behavior. For me personally, I think that the findings that really are, a wow factor for PAX are those lifetime outcomes. And so part of what makes PAX successful is that it is an evidence-based practice. And so we have over 50 independent studies that confirm these lifetime outcomes for our kiddos. And so we can see long-term benefits of a reduction in special education services for our kiddos who would have needed those services, but after being in a PAX classroom, they're no longer being referred for those services. Things like a reduction in substance misuse, a reduction in the need for psychiatric services, and increases in things like high school graduation and college attendance. So those lifetime outcomes for me are it's really the data that makes the difference for PAX, implementing these simple strategies in elementary school, middle school, high school, and then we have happier, more productive members of society because of this.
Great.
Are you facing any barriers or challenges in getting PACS out there in the communities?
So funding is always a barrier. We can see struggles in getting funding to implement this at a building wide level for schools or in a Boys and Girls Club. But where we see success in this is when a state agency or a governing body finds out about PACS and does a little bit of research into the evidence-based outcomes and supports initiatives statewide or agency-wide due to the evidence-based outcomes of PACS. And so we're overcoming those barriers, but I would say that tends to be the number one barrier is funding oftentimes.
Now, to go off of that or to piggyback off of that, how can parents or educators, even lawmakers, how can they help? How can they contribute?
Yeah. I think the number one way that anybody could help support PAX is to take a training and see for yourself what PAX is, and then begin utilizing it in your settings with young people. Word of mouth is one of the best ways that we can spread anything, well, positive or negative. But if you have that experience with PAX and you see those benefits for yourself, then spreading, the positivity of PAX, it becomes easy at that point. And so I would say that supporting PAXes to begin learning it and using it in your own spaces. And then also just sharing, using your connections to share what you've experienced. So depending on what circles you travel in, that can make a big difference for beginning to create what I like to call a PAX community, where we're starting to see these strategies in different places across a community.
So is it possible for just a parent to go and access PAX and your strategies, or do you need to be part of an organization and implement it in a larger setting?
Yeah, so parents can definitely take a PAX tools training. We have a variation that is designed for parents and caregivers. So anybody who's taking care of children in their own home, we have a training or a workshop that they can take. We also have a training where we equip community educators with the strategies that they can then share with parents in their community. And so that's a little bit more sustainable, where you have somebody who's already providing parent education in their community, and now they have the strategies to equip parents with PAX. And so there's multiple options for helping share PAX with